Hi everyone, welcome to the Grind. We are going to be talking about a new series today. We are going through the series called The Legacy of Love, where we're looking at different stories of love that left an impact on individuals.
I guess, I wonder whose series is this from?
Not me. And we're definitely not talking about the message that I just talked about.
Well, hey!
Wow.
Collabity clap.
Honestly, it's always so awkward talking about my own message, but here we are.
Well, just
So-
think about it. It's not your message. It's God's message.
Oh yeah,
shared to people.
Oh, okay.
Boom.
Drop the mic.
Focus away from self. Katrina, how can I focus on myself? Okay, so we're going to be talking about the ultimate test, basically a love that sacrifices. And as I shared, we're looking at the story of Abraham and really deep down what was really driving him, which was the fear of God. So we're going to be talking about the fear of God today. So speaking about the test, right? So Abraham faced the test, which is, sacrifice your son. What are some tests that you have faced recently?
Recently.
For me, having expensive hobbies, I feel. And
That's a test?
Yeah.
Isn't
and
that a
just
choice?
Resisting. No.
Is that
and
an
then
option?
And then what follows is resisting the urge to always buy the new items, new equipment.
Oh.
Yes, I'm just spending way too much money on it. They just dropped a new lens that I really, really want. It's like 50K. I'm like,
So tell us what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what he wants.
What you really, really...
He wanna. Okay, we're done.
I mean, for me, I think it's a lot of the fear recently is more driven towards my children. Like, for example, like my children's interest, just in the essence of like what they want to do with their life. But it's quite
They're
funny.
only 5 and 2 or 6 and 3.
I know, but the thing is, it's just that for me, I never sort of had that mindset when I was young. I mean, like, you're not supposed to, but then you just want to sort of like want them to have a perspective already.
They're
And I think that's
6 and 3.
but then I think those are the tests that I've been having as well, like how they're making fun of me, having that right balance to make
not
sure
making
that
fun.
they should have and enjoy it.
the only thing going through my head is Daddy Rico. No.
Okay,
Yeah, this is my test basically dealing with these two guys.
that's your answer.
That's my answer. No, carry on. But
So,
yeah,
yes.
sorry, it's a legit understand. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
understand. Okay, cool. Yes, understanding, your children. Yes.
Yes. But it's a test in the essence of like how far is my urge to sort of like, oh, you got to do this and stuff like that, or as opposed to like, you know what, just chillax.
You're telling
Find
yourself
it-
to chillax.
Yeah. So there you go.
I'm kind of curious in Rico's mind, like what is the perfect job descriptions for his children? What does he want his children to be when they grow up?
Problem in my mind right now is like seeing them that busy while I'm outside fishing. Chilling.
Fishing. I see. So
just
help
kidding.
Rico achieve his job of becoming the fisher of men. Oh! He said fishing, right? He didn't say fishing
That
of what?
pursuit.
He didn't say fishing of what?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I guess I feel like I face tests all the time, even waking up in the morning.
You know, the funny thing is, while she was saying that there's so many tests I'm facing, and then she's just looking at Dom.
Yeah, that's what tests I'm facing. Just dealing with these.
I recently just told her that there might be some important files I may have lost. So that's why she looked at me.
Yeah, so that's my test right there.
Whoops.
Dealing. So that's I'm saying do I put on a that's okay face or where is my files, Dom? So
Hey, buddy.
yeah, we'll see what happens.
Somebody's gonna get hurt.
Yeah, not saying who, but I think he knows him very well. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about fear, right? Now, fear can drive behavior. Fear can either drive Dom to make those files happen, or
Or just come up with other files that are just random. Here are the files. I don't know why it's like that,
I
but,
don't know what they are all,
but these are the ones.
Yeah, but let's talk a little about fear, right? Fear can drive behavior. Fear is a motivator. So have you found yourselves in situations where you were driven by fear?
I think a humorous example of something where I was driven by fear is when I intentionally deprive myself of social media so I could just avoid spoilers of a movie that's coming up.
Oh.
And you know what also doesn't help to add on to that is FOMO. You know, the fear of missing out, that I need to be up to date with everything. So yeah, that's a double whammy for me.
True, like especially when there are like hit TV shows out and they usually come out on like a Sunday night. So Mondays I avoid social.
Yeah.
So actually, I was doing a little bit of research about like fear driving behavior, and apparently flash sales are an example of using fear to drive you, because you know you have a certain time period to buy things and now you're gonna miss out on that sale. So I realized that I have been driven by fear when I indulge in flash sales, because I'm like, I don't need another pair of shoes, but I kind of need that. If not, the sale's gonna be over. So yes.
Since you guys are talking about more of like in the hilarity side,
Yes, the hilarity side.
driven by fear is when you are watching for a whole few hours when your wife is not around, and then suddenly she said, "I'm coming home early," and then you start cleaning the house.
That's like, you know, like your parents say, "Oh, can you take the chicken out of the fridge to thaw?"
Yeah.
Like hours later,
It's still frozen.
hot water, please.
And then she comes back home. I've washed the dishes, cleaned the laundry. The toilet's all good.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, like even going back to the example before that, Jacob was talking about, like, you know, turning off the TV because, you know, just in case his mom comes home, and turning off time. I'm like, yeah, I've definitely had that fear too.
And I'm gonna do the technique that his mom did, was basically touching the TV and see whether it's warm or not.
Wow.
Unless they have a smart kid like me, where they have a CCTV, so watching when the parents come home, because there's a certain time that it takes for the TV to cool down, right? So if you turn it off at just the right time, then it will be cooled down before the parents step into the house. Yes.
Wow.
I've thought it out because I've gotten in trouble that way before. So I've learned from mistakes, learned from my fear of, you know, retribution from my parents, and therefore
Fear of the wattish.
yeah, fear of the wattish. Yes, that is the fear that drives me as well. So yeah, talking about fear. So one of the tests, like, well, Abraham went through actually a lot of tests in his life, and basically the ultimate one was being asked to sacrifice his son.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, man.
It's a very tough one.
It's a tough one, especially when he says like, offer your son, the son that you love. It's kind of like a double whammy. It's like, here's your offer your son, and then your son that you love.
And also imagine the fact that the process of having Isaac was a very tough one too for them. They struggled because of.
I mean, she's barren. She had him at a ripe old age of 90. So.
and supposedly that is Isaac was the way to that of God fulfilling His promise. That He's like, you're gonna be a great nation.
Yeah.
You can't have a great nation if you have no
child.
one
So
else
that's
to-
actually so. I mean, if I'm thinking like Abraham, like, what? So, yeah, but then he just went ahead with what he was told. So how did he demonstrate his faith and trust in God? And maybe like, how does the story challenge our understanding of sacrifice and obedience to God?
I think, you know, the crazy thing about it is because, you know, like when you talk about sacrifice, right? The first thing that you think about is the only way you sacrifice something is the value. I think, is that the right word? The value, like for example, for Isaac's situation, for Abraham's situation, Isaac is someone that he truly loved because the circumstances, the fact that Sarah was barren, and that in itself has already like sort of like, I don't know if value is a really good word, but it's just the amount, the sacrifice, the amount of sacrifice you have is based on the amount of love you have for that person. So for me, sacrifice talks about like something that is so almost impossible for you to give and let go.
Yeah, because it's like, if it's something that's easy to give, I mean, that's not really sacrifice, is it? It's just like a throwaway.
Yeah, it's like Jesus. Like basically, the Father sacrificed His only Son for us, and it's like almost sacrificing something that is irreplaceable. Yeah, so that's what I think.
For me, I had a different perspective. I thought, you know, this idea of sacrifice and obedience, I think, like my I think it first firstly, I feel it's very similar. It's along the lines of that belief that, people believe that, when they become a Christian, life is supposed to be easier for them, but not really, right? So I feel in the same sense as that line, right? Because of the Bible spoke of God's character and how he just loves to bless us and how he blesses us with his providence as well. It almost feels ironic that the one giving is also the one taking, I think. Like it's almost counterintuitive, Why, like for Abraham, like why give a son and then just yoink him back, know?
Yeah.
And so I feel, I guess one way to kind of understand this is to really adopt the mentality that Job had, that the Lord gives, the Lord takes, but either way, you'll praise him. Yeah.
So you're looking at it more in no matter the situation is, the outcome would be still the same, that we still need to praise him no matter. Okay. So that's where you're leaning towards in terms of obedience, right? From the sacrifice. Yeah.
It's easy to be obedient and sacrifice something like if it's
very small.
If it's very small, very
Yeah.
easy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, I'll give up, this, not a problem. I have plenty of this. But yeah, when it's something close to your heart, then it's next level. And I know God's values obedience over sacrifice. So it's not looking at like, oh, what you're giving, but the heart behind it.
The intention.
The intention behind it. Like even when God's like stopped Abraham from doing anything, he's like, like I see that you have the fear of God. It's not even like I see that you've decided to give up your son or you've done all these things for me. It's like, no, I recognize that you have the fear of God. So yeah, I think the way this challenges me is that we get called to do something hard.
Yeah.
And I think when you have an understanding of who God is, it's easier to step forth.
Yeah.
And and like again, if you think about Abraham, right? If I was Abraham and I was told, hey, sacrifice your son, offer your son as a burnt offering, I think I would be fearful, like, oh, I'm about to lose the closest thing to my heart besides my wife, or all these promises that God said it's gonna come to fruition.
Yeah.
It's supposed to happen through this son, and you're taking it away from me. I mean, there's all this fear. Like, what if God it's just this? What if I spent all my life following a psychotic God? Or
That's true.
Yeah.
so it's all this like fear, right?
Yeah.
But
That's why I do think, like, when it comes to obedience, right, one of the things that really sort of stuck to me when it comes to this as well is when you talk about obedience, the first thing that comes in my mind is about trust. Like when you obey someone, you have the complete trust that the person is going to do something. Let's just say, I mean, maybe Abraham understood the fact that God is not the person who would actually want him to sacrifice his son, but it's more of a test. I don't know if it's in his mind, but there's just more of the trust. And if in case really this is what God wants me to do, God is gonna do something else. He's gonna, I don't know, like provide something else, or like what he did with Job, because you mentioned it, like his children were died because of died, and then he had more children
yeah. So, well, I mean, with Abraham, like he, like I said, he didn't have like the wrong kind of fear, like, oh, I'm scared, but if now God's gonna like me. But he's like, you know what? He had the fear of God, which is why it was recognized in Genesis chapter 22. So, in what ways can the fear of the Lord be seen as an expression of love and reverence rather than fear? I mean, than terror. Like, I think people mistaken fear of the Lord as, I mean, I guess the word fear in itself
usually is in a
like,
negative connotation.
It's never like anything good. It's like I'm scared, like to the point of like I can't do anything. Fear, right? It's so, but I don't think fear of the, I don't know why English gotta be English, but like why this word was picked. Like if you look at it in like the Hebrew words, there are different versions of the word fear, and the one that's being used in this context is yare, which is basically the reverence for God. But I think when people think fear of the Lord, you're just thinking like, oh, I'm scared because he's a big being.
I think if I'm gonna be putting it that way, I think like because now that you've talked about like in the worldly perspective of fear is more of like the negative connotation, right? So usually if it's something to do with fear and it's driven the inability to do something is different. Like it's more in the worldly perspective. Like for example, like when we talk about fear, what is your phobia? Like, the fear, like claustrophobic, something like that. Like the fear of like not being able to be in a small room. But I think when you have the fear of God because of that you're just in awe of who He is and what He can do, I think there is more of like a confidence of the fear of God in the essence of like capable of doing something, the ability of doing something, and being able to put that full trust on Him that He's gonna do something. So because of that reverence and the acknowledgement of knowing His sovereignty, as opposed to the fear of like, oh, I'm so scared that God is gonna if I don't do this, then and then you have that sort of like, instead of steering away, you like sometimes you would steer away from doing that because you don't know what the outcome would be. So the fear is going to be sort of different, like the fear, the inability of doing something, as opposed to the fear of the reverence to God and knowing what He's able to do. So yeah.
I mean, the fear of God was like actually, as you said, that's exactly what I fell for. Like I always interpreted fear in the negative connotations when I tried to understand this, and I did struggle for a very long time trying to fully understand this. And I think the best way that it was explained to me that really made it click was that this fear of God is basically you're in awe of Him. I think, and so that helped me understand it. And I feel the more I see it from that perspective, I begin to realize that the fear of the Lord in my life, it's really like I can imagine how far I can go based off my own efforts. So then to me the fear of the Lord is I'm almost like fearful of a life without God.
Okay.
That without Him I can only go so far. It reminds me of that verse. I think it's Exodus 33:15, where it says, "Then Moses said to him, 'If your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here.'" If you're not there, God, I don't want to be there either.
Yeah. So I think the fear of God is something that should be taken seriously.
Of course.
Let's talk a little bit more about the fear of the Lord. So can the fear of God be cultivated and developed over time, or is it an instantaneous occurrence?
Oh.
The reason why I'm thinking that is because sometimes I don't know, there's things that you can be scared of. Once you experience it, that's it. You're scared of it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But maybe there's some things that it just takes over time that you realize, like maybe before you weren't scared, and then over time, like, oh snap, I am scared of this. I maybe, because I'm thinking like a recent example would be like, for example, like before I never really thought I'd be scared of being stuck in an enclosed space. And I've been in situations where it's enclosed and it's fine. But I think the fear, I guess, changed up when I was stuck in the lift with like that's overcrowded and there's no way out, when they said you're stuck here for like at least 45 minutes. That's when I started to
Freak out
a little bit. I was holding the side of the lift and I was like breathing really deeply, like
I don't know why I'm laughing, but it's just the imagination of seeing her sweating like that.
I was clutching the side of the lift. I was like, and so I was like, yeah, Pat, do you have any icebreaker games? I'm like, hi, I'm
what is your favorite movie? Mine is Final Destination.
Exactly that. So yeah, I would say now I have maybe a fear of being stuck in a lift with many people with no way out.
Oh, okay.
If you ever get stuck in the lift, you better do that.
I might start crying.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, can we translate that into the fear of God? Is having the fear of God like instantaneous, or is it something that happens over time?
Oh, I think this one for me personally, I think it's very situational. Like there are situations in your life where because like it's almost like you're in a relationship with the person as well, like being able to have that sort of reverence and awe of God, it takes a lot of like a relationship process as well. Like for example, when like basically, yeah. So the more you know about the person, the more you start to revere that person. So like in the situation with God, and there would be times as well when you just suddenly have that fear. Is when I can imagine, like for example, if there is a very sick person, and then like to a point like the person is about to, let's just say, like die, and then suddenly God does something and then that person is healed instantaneously. That one is like, for me, is an instant fear of God, of knowing like, oh, this is my God, this is the capability of what God can do. So maybe like for me it's more of like a very situational thing. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I agree that I feel both are viable. Yeah, and yeah, it depends on the person. Like,
Yeah.
you know, someone can receive, what I would say, a truckload of conviction, and that would cause them to like repent. And I feel that kind of fear of God is what I described was they're so in awe of Him, and they realize how far they've been going without Him, and so now they're like, oh my gosh, now I need Him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I've heard so many testimonies that are like that.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I think mine is something that gets cultivated over time.
Yeah.
Especially in the sense of like, what I like is that it keeps getting deeper. As my theology gets like more like fed proper and correct information, then I kind of start understanding God in different ways, and I'm like, oh wow, this is something I never thought of. And as that happens, I think I'm just more in awe of Him. Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah, because I'm thinking when I first said yes to Jesus, the fear that I had was, oh no, if I don't say yes to Him, He might cast me down to hell, right? So that's the fear, being scared. So that's the wrong kind of fear. Like I'm saying yes to something because I like that, the fear
Out
of the Lord.
out of terror, being terrified.
Terror.
Yeah,
So it's like
out
the
of
fear
terror,
of the Lord compels me. It's more like, yeah, better do that. If not, He's going to be banishing me away from
Eternity.
heaven.
Yeah.
But then you start to understand what really truly having the fear of the Lord is. And so I guess for me it's like cultivated over time is when you understand who God is, then you have this healthy fear, right? Of living in reverence and in awe of Him. I think it's always good to have like a healthy fear in our lives anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there is. Obviously, you don't want to do stupid stuff and go out into dark alleys. But then you also don't want to like live afraid and be like, oh no, I can't go there because it's dark.
Yeah.
So it's having a balance.
Yeah.
as
It's
well.
almost like like now that you've set an example of like the opposite, the difference between the fear of God knowing that He will that if you don't do what He's asked you to do, that you would go to hell, as opposed to the fear of God of that situation of His absence.
So I think like nurturing and growing in the fear of the Lord honestly boils down to knowing who He is, studying His word, spending time with Him, and I guess growing a relationship with Him. So I think that's like one of the key ways to do so. Now ultimately, like with this series, it's basically the idea of like leaving behind a legacy, right? Because I think if you think about like people who left behind a legacy, and it takes a lot of sacrifice, love, and so on. And so I think you have to go through trials. You have to go through tests.
Yes.
And I think it's safe to say that there is no one that we know who hasn't been through tests as left behind a legacy. Like anyone who's any history person who's left behind some sort of like mark in history, they've been through tests. It's not easy come, easy go.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know about you guys, but I would like to think that I would like to leave a mark in history, leave behind a legacy. Not because it's all about me,
Your self-desire, but
it's because, hey, like what can I do to glorify God? So, and I guess the question would be, how can we respond with the fear of God in the test that we currently face?
I think because the thing is, we were talking about earlier regarding like whenever Moses spoke to God, and then every time he was given these tests, there was a part where God would say like, and He will bless you, right? I think in this essence, if our mindset is not in I mean, like, I'm just saying this because it's not really easy to not put our focus there. Like sometimes, like we would do sort of like these difficult circumstances or these challenges because there's an outcome that we would benefit from. But if we can, if we ask the Lord, like, Lord, if I really going to face these trials, I wanted to face it with you. Looking at it in the perspective that it's not about only the blessing that God is gonna be providing during that circumstances. So it's not only about the blessing that God is gonna be providing after, but it's more of like in the essence of like what is God capable of doing during those trials, in His presence, like Him being available during that period as well. So if I were to leave a legacy, I really want that to be in the essence of like people would remember me because of what God has done in my life. And I think that for me is a blessing because knowing the fact that people, like the people that you're left behind, that you've left behind, would experience that because God is still there. So yeah,
I think
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'm almost around that area. That similar.
But
as
not
you.
really.
He's better than you.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
He's already left behind multiple legacies. You just don't know about
the
it.
only difference is my legacy is already happening.
In the form of his children.
No, I was actually talking about Dom.
Oh.
But that's true. You're right. Thanks, kids.
You're gonna rename your kid Legacy now.
Like an AC.
Like
Legacy
AC.
and Mark. You left a mark and a legacy on the
Oh
world.
wow.
Okay, no.
This is my test.
I think for me is, I think once I've came to understanding the belief that I cannot live on this earth without God. I think once I've got that in my head, I've proceeded to believe that every test that God sends my way is just a way for Him to kind of pry off something unhealthy. And that it's only a struggle in the test because I'm the one actually who's still holding on to that unhealthy trait. And yeah, similar to what you said, Rico, that is this awe of God that I trust Him so much to help me become this so-called masterpiece that He has planned for me. And I think that's how we can also just use that to just glorify God, because like you said, that this transformation that you've gone through, that the people can see the contrast of the before and after.
Yeah.
That kind of is God's glory, that is honestly His legacy on me, and therefore it could also be His legacy for others as well. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. One thing, just going back to the thing that I was talking about in my message was like, all the times that Abraham spoke with God, it was along the lines of God and establishing His covenant with Him. Like, I will bless you, I'll multiply you, so on and so forth, and I'll make you a great nation, give you a name, call you peoples, whatever. And then suddenly it's like, bam, sacrifice your son.
Yeah.
Right? So the thought is was Abraham motivated this whole time because of what he could get out of God? It's like, oh, okay, sure, I'll listen to you, I'll get something, right? Oh, shoot, He's blessed me whenever I listen to Him. Let me do round two. Oh, yes, and he keeps going, and then finally he's like, by the way, the son that I gave you, yeah, I like him back.
I want him back.
Yeah. So it's like, then the question is, all this time that we've been doing things for God, have we been motivated out of personal gain, or actually we love Him and revere Him? And I think that's something that we just need to also keep in check in mind as well, is am I doing things for the Lord? Am I leaving behind a legacy just because of what I'll get out of it? Or is it truly like building the kingdom of God? Is it truly, driven by the fear of the Lord? Is it truly out of reverence for Him?
Yeah, and also sometimes like if when the Lord when a time comes when the Lord asks you, it's time to let go, would you be willing to let go?
Yeah.
So whether if it's a son, I hope not. But I'm just saying, like,
But I just start sweating right now.
but if in the essence of like, even like, let's just say we have these struggles that we have, like vices or whatever it is, it's not necessarily like a good thing for us already, but are we willing to let go of that for the sake of being able to be in the presence of God? I mean, like, of course, now we're talking about the sacrifice of love, because the thing is, if you are not careful, if there is these things in our lives that is actually putting in bondage in our lives as well, it can be considered as something that you love, because it's already something that you've been doing over and over again as well, because it's there. So yeah, when the time comes when the Lord said
It is time.
it's time to let go, are you willing to let go? So
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant about, like, you know, us, like God's trying to pry something off, and then it's me who's holding on, and this is like also like same thing what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
He's saying let go. Am I ready to let go? Yeah.
So let it go is not coming from Frozen, it's from God.
God's gonna trademark it for us.
Let go and let God.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah. So I think I think also, like, this was God's way of like testing Abraham. Like, can this guy actually be the man I can use to make my divine plan come into fruition? Hence the test, right? And I think Pastor had said this before. Like, what is not tested cannot be trusted. Because I mean, if things are not tested, like, why would you, like, for example, like, you're not going to trust someone without like qualifications as a lawyer to be like, hey, can you handle my case? Yeah, I failed all my law degrees, but sure, I can do it for you. I mean,
What is your name, sir? Saul.
Yeah, I better call
Like,
Saul.
source, trust me, bro.
Exactly.
Saul Goodman.
Yeah, so I think just think about the tests that you go through as
Yeah.
opportunities for God to really grow you and
Amen.
use you in His divine plan.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's that
Good
for
job.
today. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you at our next grind. Bye.
Bye.